So, in Western societies, individuals have been increasingly having the problem of being whim worshippers. They're worshiping every impulse, they act on their impulses. And it's becoming increasingly like this in large part, or at least in part, because of these devices, these little mini computers that we call phones, but also because of television and because of instant gratification, video games, and the like. Uh, we've had a problem with, and I mean we, as in practically everybody, me myself included, has had a problem with the lack of impulse control. These things are designed to give you instant gratification and to as far as the speed in which the impulses are satisfied are is rapid. And the problem with that is that that has spread everywhere. Now, I've talked a lot about the lack of accountability that we're in a crisis in right now, the crisis of lack of accountability. I've talked about whim worshiping before. I've talked about the lack of self efficacy and the expectation of some authority figure granting special privileges or being taken care of through this authority figure, whether it be institution or some supernatural being or whatever. And when somebody is whim worshiping, they start to degrade their own ability to function, their own self efficacy, and that opens the door where somebody might be more open to the idea of somebody else taking care of them if they don't feel like they can take care of themselves. So what do I mean by that? If people don't believe that they can take care of themselves, that they don't believe that they're capable of producing the wealth or capable of producing the things that they need, and their abilities have been cut short, or their abilities, it's been made more difficult in part because the weakening of their abilities, but also because you have rising inflation and regulation and taxation, because what the government does, because again, people want some authority figure like the government to take care of them. The government gets overbloated and corrupt, and we have the taxation, we have the regulation, we have the inflation, which then in turn hampers productive people from achieving their ends. Just to name an example, not to mention people are more difficult to interact with because people lose trust in one another. Again, it goes back to the whim worshiping. It goes back to the lack of accountability. It goes back to the lack of self-efficacy. These devices make it worse. The more of a whim worshiper you are, the less you have the capacity to really focus and control your environment. And we see it everywhere. Right now, you see it with the Ukraine war. People in the West, you have the special interests that want to keep it going because they're making a lot of money on this and because they hate Russia for various reasons. But the people who want to stop it can't. Donald Trump wants to stop the war. He can't do it because the people around him, he can't trust the people around him because he doesn't understand the situation, because he's accustomed to something like instant gratification. And, without really sitting down to understand, to have a deep understanding of what the situation is, what are the philosophic underpinnings of what's wrong with the West right now. Putin is very calculated and has a very clear plan about what he wants to do. Now, he's not perfect. He is, too, a whim worshiper as well. Zelensky especially. I mean, he's a drug addict. But you see what's wrong here? We don't have adults in the room. Putin is maybe the closest thing to an adult, and that's saying something. Trump and Zelensky are not adults. in the room. Maybe Trump, maybe a little more than Zelensky is. Certainly, Zelensky is no adult that's in the room. But the West lacks adults in the room. They're all stunted in development, and myself included, by the way. I've gratified my impulses. I have become increasingly a whim worshiper, in part because of devices like these. And what has that done? Well, that's truncated my ability to focus and to change my environment in a meaningful way. So this is all food for thought. Really, this is something that we have a serious problem with. Maybe we need to take a break from our devices and focus on how to improve ourselves.